Bruno is asking, in the COVID context, any thoughts on workspace marketplaces? So actually, I'm going to take a step back and talk about COVID in general in the context of marketplaces, of our portfolio, and of the industry. And and what's interesting is crises in general are accelerators of underlying trends. So whatever was happening before keeps happening just at a faster pace. So the transition to e-commerce was already happening before COVID, but now more and more people have bought online than ever before in every category. The transition to online medicine was happening, but very slowly. It started to happen at a much quicker pace. Same is true for everything from online food ordering to online education, etc. And that said, there's things that are going to benefit from COVID, and there are things that are going to be um, worse off. Now, what's interesting is we look at our portfolio. We have maybe we've invested in 600 companies. We maybe have 500 active in the portfolio. 90% has actually at least benefited, or is at least the same, or much benefited from COVID. And I will bucket the full portfolio in 4 buckets. Bucket number 1, companies that are absolutely crushing it, doing better than they've ever done, way beyond expectations. And these are in the categories that where the offline players essentially have disappeared, and people had to go online. So online food ordering, online, so Instacart is crushing it, but way beyond the expectations they had before COVID. It's probably true of I haven't looked at the numbers, but I assume it's true of Seamless Grubhub and Uber Eats. It's definitely true for us, of Chubb's, of Slice, and all of the food vertical companies. It's true of alcohol delivery, like Drizzly, for alcohol in general. Penrose Hill, the wine subscription business, is absolutely crushing it. Online game companies in general are absolutely crushing it, or mobile game companies. The platforms that support them, company like ScaleFast we're investors in, are absolutely crushing it. And of course, all the online education players, online communication players like Zoom, the online telemedicine players are all absolutely crushing it. And by that I mean they're not just on track. They've 3x, 4x, 5x from where they were before, like a pace of growth that was unimaginable before. Second category or bucket, let's say another 30% of the portfolio, players are doing a lot better than expected, both their plan and what I would have expected ahead of time. And these are frankly e-commerce players in general. It wasn't obvious to me that a player like Rebag selling $2,000 handbags would do well when you can't be showing off your handbag, but people's saving rates increased dramatically during COVID. They were not going to restaurants, they were not traveling, they were not booking hotels, they were not going to shows, and they were in a way also suffering from being at home, and so they decided to reward themselves, and they rewarded themselves with a number of luxury goods, and so Chrono 24 in watches, Rebag in handbags, but frankly, every online e-commerce company that I know is actually doing better than they were doing before COVID. Then we have 30% of the portfolio kind of doing on track what they were doing before. Now there's 10%. The 10% last is the one directly negatively affected by COVID. And those are people in travel, people in tourism, people in offline business conferences, people in offline ticketing. Like if your Live Nation's revenues fell 98% in the second quarter. I mean, that's insane. And I'm sure they're still way down, and I don't know when that business is going to come back. Same for StubHub probably, and SeatGeek and companies like that will probably come back, but I don't know when. And so if you're in those categories, if you're the larger players like Airbnb, you can raise money and you can probably weather the storm. If you're a smaller player, you may very well die. If you don't have a lot of cash, or you're not in a position to furlough your employees for a long time and have 2 years of cash until this ends. And by the way, my current assumption is, I mean, the markets seem to be pricing in that this is kind of over, we're done in 6 months. Historically, pandemics have lasted 2 years. I can very well see this lasting another 18 months before things start coming back to normal, and including reasonably bad second wave, including the fact that we haven't yet seen in the play through the economy individual bankruptcies, small business bankruptcies, and frankly larger companies that have been impacted by this. Now, all in all, tech is the place to be. We're both the generator of growth, we're generator of productivity growth, generator of economic growth, and this sector in general is seeing more growth than ever before. And these times that are as difficult as they may be, and there's a lot of human suffering, and I actually really feel for people that have lost their job, or also great moments of opportunity. If you look in the last century, the Great Depression is when U.S. productivity growth was higher than it had ever been before, and was in the decades afterwards. And that's when it led to human ingenuity. And if you look at the 2008, 2009 crisis, the most compelling companies, the most definitive companies of the last decade, Slack, Uber, WhatsApp, Airbnb, were all created in that time period, and that is not a coincidence. And so right now we're seeing extraordinary innovation in all these verticals, like remote work, to comment on Bruno's questions, on in telemedicine and online education, and we're going to have them be the defining companies of the coming decade. And so now is an extraordinary time to build a company. There's the underlying trends have been massively accelerated, and at the same time, the opportunity cost of your time of doing something else, of being in another company, has decreased dramatically. And so now is the best time possible to be an entrepreneur, and to the extent you're driven to it, I would encourage people to pursue their dreams, and now's the time to go. Now, I will leave it at that for today, and I look forward to talking